never gonna win. Long as you're happy, you're always gonna grin. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. Never gonna lose, never gonna win. Long as you're happy, you're always gonna grin. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. Oh, it's Nick Elston. How are you, buddy?
I just say, I love that. I'm a big fan of walk-on music. I love that music. It's very kind of country, which is my thing. Who was that by? It's you.
Give you a clue.
Nice.
Way.
Yeah. Hello, by the way. Hello, everyone. Very nice to be here. Thank you, Ashley.
Oh, Nick, this is incredible. I don't know if you see my post today on LinkedIn. So many people are talking about mental health. Yeah. So tell us who you are, what you do. So there might be some people out there that don't know who Nick Elston is.
It's like I'm on the chase.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my name is Nick Elston. The headline, I'm an inspirational speaker on the lived experience of mental health. As a disclaimer, I'm not a coach, counselor, guru, or trainer. You wouldn't want that in your life. Trust me. Far too empathic for that. Just agree with everybody. But for me, that gap is the engagement piece. And that's kind of what I do. With my other cap on of the millions that I own, I'm also a transformational speaking coach. So it ain't presentation skills, as you're about to bear witness to. It's about how do we change our narrative to change our experience. So simply, I work in lots of different environments, helping people to create transformation through narrative and speaking.
Perfect. So if I'm struggling or the company's not working properly, you'll come in and help us.
That's kind of the thing. I think that one of the biggest challenges, and I'm sure we'll kind of touch on this as we go through, actually is around speaking, but it's not necessarily being on stage at Accountex. It's actually could be one person or 1 million people on a video. I think the secret to me is being able to have better conversations around things. And mental health is absolutely one of those things that we need to have better conversations around. As a non-solution focused person myself, I guess my role is not to give people advice by any stretch for insurance purposes. I'm going to add that in, Ashley. But my role is to give people the ammunition to ask themselves better questions. Why do we do what we do? How can we start to have better conversations, change the way that we think about things so that we don't think them as woke, or we don't think of them as all these different labels that we can give things like mental health.
And we never used to talk about it, did we?
No, we didn't. I think there's a conditioning element. I think generationally and culturally, I do a lot of work all over the world. And I think in the UK especially, we've got a real challenge. We've been brought up to believe that self-care is selfish. So we'll feel guilty when we put ourselves before anything or anyone. So we don't. And we run again a little weaker tomorrow. But also there's a conditioning element of, I remember my dad saying to me growing up, don't trust work with your personal stuff. That's a conditioning element. That's why I didn't open up in my employed life. But also, I come from a naval family, so very kind of alpha background in that sense, where big is good, big is strong. That has an impact on us and the way that we go forward. We're conditioned by everything, like global events, global environments, but also our own background and why we're here right now.
Yeah. And do you think that since lockdown, people have been more open, or was it coming before that?
You see, I have a challenge with openness, and I think this is probably why I'm not on social media. I'll get a lot of pushback, but I think it's great to talk about these things, but I think the problem is when we encourage people to talk and open up without the solutions to catch people, actually becomes quite damaging. So before I left Twitter back in May 2020, you have somebody jumping on saying, I'm not really feeling life today. And then somebody else go, yeah, nor am I. And it becomes like mosh pit of despair. I think so as much as it's great to open up, and I think it is really important to have conversations, absolutely, it needs to be conversations with intent. It cannot just be hoping somebody's going to get better or get caught by somebody, especially when solution-focused options may be not around for that person.
No, fair enough. Okay, so you are talking at Accountex.
Yes.
Yeah, that is going to be cool. This is a return visit.
Yes.
Because you were there a while back, weren't you?
Yeah, I've missed 1 year in 4, virtually and in person, since I first spoke there in 4. It's got 7 now, like 2016. Yeah, so I'm there a lot. And also the Accountex North as well. In Manchester, I'm usually at, and I did a big Freudian slip on stage there. If you want to ask me about that later on,
right? Okay.
Yeah, it's an amazing conference, and I'm really excited to get back. Session called "How to Forge Ahead: A Lived Experience Playbook on Mental Health."
No, perfect. And lived experience. Then that is because you've been there, done that.
Yeah, it's kind of my disclaimer. I'm not there to fix anybody. I'm not there to be the solution or the advisor. There are amazing solutions, but for me, the gap is, unless you get engagement to those solutions, absolutely nothing changes. Not exclusively, but men really struggle with this. It also has to be said, in all the sectors I work in, very often emotionally fueled conversations, emotionally led conversations in the accounting space, which is the reason why actually I think my work has gone down well in the space. It isn't really, it's certainly better now, but it certainly isn't encouraged to the level. So we have in-depth conversations around these things as well. But I think it's about and the great thing about your LinkedIn post this morning is stimulated this conversation about actually what mental health is. And very often the term mental health is used as, it's actually used as a diagnosis. This guy, girl's got mental health. Nick, I have mental health. Yeah, absolutely you do. 100% of us do. Whether it's good or bad, that's a whole different thing. And it's also a million miles away from mental illness. So that's the kind of insights that I try to bring people from a lived experience perspective. What does mental illness actually look like, feel like, actually what the mental health challenges look like, and how can we work through them? But on the condition of, this is what's worked for me, but there's no one fix all. It's finding your way through things as well. Yeah.
And so tell us the story of how you got here. You were in a hotel in Portishead. It was the Ritz Carlton or something. It's Celebris, wasn't it?
I would love it to have been. And if I knew I was talking about this stuff for a living, I would have gone with somewhere like that to try and get the commercials out of it. But it was a Premier Inn in Portishead, so classy guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So long story short, I have mental illness. I have obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, largely managed now, but that's a whole different conversation, I guess. But it was certainly rife when I was a child. As I got older in life, it morphed into something called generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD, which is statistically more common, but less commonly known, obsessive compulsive anxiety, essentially. So for education or my professional life, I was always constantly running at a super high state of anxiety, super high state of nervous energy. I know a lot of your audience will resonate with this. You could be highly successful and highly performing, fueled by high anxiety. But as a wise man once told me, you can only run for so long until you stop. And therein lies the problem. After years of burnout, I stopped in 2012. I had a breakdown outside of that Premier Inn in Somerset. Classy guy. Lenny Henry was nowhere to be seen when I needed the guy. Trust me. But I know a lot of you will resonate with this. I went to a business networking meeting, you know, the breakfast type. If you've not had the pleasure, you go along, pretend to be happy, strong, successful, and confident, eat some breakfast, sell some stuff, and leave again. Format of most meetings, spoiler alert. And I left that kind of environment. And I think you're wearing a mask in life when you leave that relationship, that conversation, that situation, and your body and your soul just drop because you feel like a puppet with the strings cut. You feel like the performance has ended. Who are you when no one is looking? To be able to ask yourself that question and not know the answer is a scary place to be. And it was at that point that actually I jumped in the car, and for 3 hours I couldn't move. I couldn't function. I certainly lost hope, I think, which is when people lose hope or the hope of something better, that's what drives everybody. But this was quite seriously actually going to be something that consumed me, or I had to let it out. And thankfully, that's what I decided to do. 2 weeks later, at the same professional event, I shared about the breakdown, and I shared about OCD in kids. It was cheap therapy. It's like 15 quid, including breakfast. It was a Premier Inn. It was cheap therapy. But what I found was, by me talking about this very openly, as a big guy, I'm 6'4", I'm 24 stone guy. I'm not small. Talking about mental illness back in 2012, we didn't do this kind of stuff. What I found was, by me being honest and open and vulnerable with people, they started sharing their stuff with me. And it was at that point, Ashley, I realized two things. I can never be a coach or a counselor. I feel massively overwhelmed at the moment. The second thing was, actually, I felt deeply saddened. Why is it that when we need help, we don't reach out for help? But you'll be the first to help somebody else. And certainly in the accountancy space, that is one of the biggest challenges. You'll give and give and give until you drop. It's like a twisted game of pass the parcel. that your clients will have lots of anxiety around their affairs, and then they'll dump that on you and walk away whistling. Where do you go with that before you even go home? So the room's got bigger, the audience has got bigger, and the rest, as they say, is history. And now I'm here on your lovely show.
No, absolutely fantastic, and thank you very much for joining us. So you're going to be at Accountex. You're going to be up on stage doing a chat. Are you going to be hanging around and talking to people and saying hi and pressing the flesh? Yeah,
pressing the flesh. I'm not quite sure if that means the same where you are in Bristol.
Having a hug, Nick. Having a hug.
Oh, big hugger.
Yeah, me too, buddy.
Yeah.
So we're definitely going to do that.
Yeah, we'll love. I'm going to be around all day. So I've got my session. It's first thing in the morning on day one, and then I'm going to hang around the rest of the day. Get to see lots of people, lots of speakers that I've met over the course of the years, and lovely people that I've met through LinkedIn conversations, like Sam, who's in the conversation right now as well. Interesting one.
Yeah, so we've also got Imana. Generally speaking, accountants don't drink their own Kool-Aid. No, they don't. And one of the things that
great quote. I might use that and credit you. I promise.
Absolutely. But during lockdown, I did a meeting every single morning for a group that I belonged to, and we just kept repeating it, and it became a cliche. I'm sorry, but we kept saying, when you're on a plane, when the driver, what's he called, a pilot, when he drops the oxygen mask, you have to put your oxygen mask on first, and we're all too keen to help everybody else. And I think this is the thing, and I guess, you know, when you were sat in that car, I take it you're just sat in the car park just going, oh, I don't know what to do.
Wait, that's a really good point.
What was going through your mind then?
John, that's a really good point, because a lot of people associate breakdown as painful or frustrating or angry, and it wasn't. The worst thing in life wasn't feeling those things. The worst thing in life was feeling absolutely nothing at all. To cut off feeling hate, you cut off feeling love. To cut off feeling bad, you cut off feeling good. You can't have one without the other, so you end up feeling nothing. And sadly, over the past 4 years, especially due to the pandemic and lockdown and everything else, a lot of people are experiencing this for the first time. The conversations I was having at conferences last year, the first year where we were properly kind of out, people were laughing and nodding in the right places, but not really as emotionally connected as they were before. Certainly my work in the education space with the up-and-coming generations, massive increase in social anxiety fueled from things like distance learning and that kind of stuff. Massive decline in social communication, which is why a lot of the work I do now is public speaking skills, not just the mental health stuff in schools. So it's a really interesting kind of knock-on effect. Emotional connection drives everything that we do. So we need to have conversations about emotional connection and its impact on mental health, but also your need to aspire. I think one of the biggest impacts of lockdown, personally and professionally, we got so kind of forced back into survival mode. And this certainly global conflict has an impact on this as well. It's taken away the desire to create goals or aspirations or to look forward the way that we used to something better. So we're kind of forced back into, and that has a massive impact on a workforce. For example, I started working with a large insurance company, and they said they had an absenteeism rate of 28% due to mental illness. I thought, that's huge. It wasn't. When we dug down into it, it's 3% mental illness, and 25% were mental health challenges stemming from them chopping the professional training budget. It has a massive impact on the way that we go forward and how we feel day to day. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Eminat is saying that you're happy to use his quote, and he's now saying definitely more on increasing barriers to emotional connections, and that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's barriers to conversations, without getting too carried away by this, but I think I feel really strongly enough to kind of bring it up. We have to kind of ask ourselves, why do we not ask better questions about things we don't understand? And I think it's fueled by cancel culture, for sure, that we don't feel that we can ask questions about things we don't understand. For example, as a 46-year-old white guy, there's so much I don't understand. So there's two main reactions we have to things we don't understand. Either we blindly agree, not knowing what we're agreeing with, which I believe is damaging, or we blindly disagree and let all of our old inherited biases run wild, equally damaging. The bit in the middle for me is asking better questions. because I'm not going to understand everything. And in every space that we work in, we're going to have things that we need to know more about. So if you look at things like identity and pronouns, that's not something that pops up in my world. And it did only pop about 18 months ago. I did not understand why it was so important for people, but it is. So again, using my own kind of asking better questions, I actually spoke to somebody to tell me why it was so important to them, and actually what should I know, and what should, and I, like yourself, I use my podcast for that, and ask honest, open questions. And what I found is, if you ask people questions about things that you don't understand with a genuine need to be curious or to educate yourself, they will every single time answer you in the best way possible. It may not change your opinions or your belief systems or anything else, but what you've done is you have educated yourself enough to have better conversations with other people. You're going to have clients and colleagues and lots of people around you that you really need to understand their perspective. And to do that, we need to ask better questions. Don't be afraid about doing that.
Yeah, that is common sense, isn't it? It is absolute common sense. But how do you turn around to somebody and say, look, I know you identify as he, she, whatever.
Yeah.
Why do you do that? It's sort of like, it's quite an awkward question, so how do you, I was going to say man up, but look, that's what I would have to do. I'd have to man up and I'm just going to ask it.
So this is the power of your network. This is the power of surrounding yourselves with people that, in the words, so I go to an amazing person, Charlotte Phillips-Lynn, and we have very open conversations about this stuff. They are the founder of Questioning Normal, and I got everything right on my podcast, got everything in the right place. We were on a panel event in Manchester the month after, and I let the she come out. And I thought just the ground swallowed me up. Now I've put so much work into this, but in Charlotte's words afterwards, I know you're not a dick, so I know you didn't do it on purpose. So we're absolutely fine. Yeah, and absolutely. I love it's finding the right people. So Charlotte is my right people.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking of my 3-year-old grandson. He'll ask anyone any question because he doesn't have a filter. He's curious. He wants to learn. He wants to know. And then when he's asked that question, someone's given him the answer. He then says why. And he'll keep asking questions.
Yeah, you might want to stop asking at a certain point.
But yeah,
I get the point.
But when do we lose that innocence that a 3-year-old has? He comes out with some fantastic questions as well. He's like, wow, where did that come from? And it's sort of like, I wish I was 3 and I could ask that question. And we shouldn't feel like that, should we, Nick?
We shouldn't. I think as long as everything's done with respect, we should be able to have open conversations. It's kind of what has driven us for kind of millennia. We thrive on storytelling, on getting to know people, on kind of forming our tribe and building our connections, all these different things that we do. We need to be able to ask questions. If you look at the thing around, absolutely, self-awareness is absolutely where it's at. If you look at the relationship between money and mental health, for people outside of the accountancy world, I work in the financial services space. For people that are outside of that, money can terrify people. Money can really bring on lots of anxiety, lots of stress, lots of worry. It impacts everything that we do. But think about growing up. We were told, don't ask your uncle how much his new car was. Don't talk about how much people bring in. And we wonder why it's such a taboo thing to worry about. It becomes this kind of protected thing. So that means fast forward to adult life, when that brown envelope drops through the door, you think, oh, Jesus. Straight away, we go to worst case scenario with things. And I think if we had open conversations about these things, it changes everything. But then we come back to the vulnerability piece. Why are we not vulnerable? Because very often we're afraid of being seen. We're afraid of being rejected in that sense. But if you look at things like procrastination, why do people sit on things, wait till the last minute? Actually, that's fueled by rejection. Another big topic in the sector, in accounting sector, is imposter syndrome. Now, the syndrome thing aside, those people feeling that they don't deserve to be where they are, or they're going to get found out. And I know we've both been at kind of points that in our career as well. The first stage event I did, I thought I was going to get caught by the police when I first come off. This cannot be a job. But all these kind of things that are going on. But that's fueled by rejection. Everything that we do is fueled by rejection. So I think if there's one thing to work on in life, and that's certainly not me, not a coach, is the fear of rejection. Because very often what you find is that fear that's holding you back is the false evidence appearing real. We talk ourselves into a losing game by default.
No, absolutely. No, that makes an awful lot of sense. So one of the things that I heard you talking about in a podcast is pricing, and that that's the imposter syndrome coming through.
Yeah.
And you were talking about when you priced a gig, but this is another thing that accountants struggle with.
Yeah,
accountants and bookkeepers that I speak to, pretty much all of them aren't charging enough. And when I turn around to them and say, "Look, put your prices up. You should be charging more," and there's always an excuse. So I'd love you to tell the story about when you priced your speaking gig and you didn't you lose it?
Yeah, I lost it. I lost a few right at the beginning because I was going in too low. So when I first started speaking many years ago now, I was doing it as a passion, as something that I really wanted to do to champion kind of positive mental health and men's health and stuff. But then the call came in from Lloyd's Banking Group saying, "How much would you charge to come and deliver a talk at our organisation?" And I went, put the phone down.
No way.
I'll be back to you. And I literally kind of, I spoke to one of my early mentors, a guy called Brad Burton. I said to him, "Okay, how much would you charge?" And he said, "Well, go double what you would want. And then if you get half of that, that's going to be a bonus." But I set it far too low. So I said £200. And he went, "Actually, the assumption was," I didn't say this, but you can't be that good if you're only charging £200. But to me, and my family upbringing, £200 loads of money.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And
how long would that talk have been?
An hour.
Yeah. So to a lot of people, 200 quid an hour, that's not bad money, is it?
But this is it, you see. Well, that's because we always relate time.
Yeah.
So, for example, when I first went self-employed as a speaker, about 10 years ago now, I started working for Tesco part-time. So then everything I was doing with pricing was related to, will I get 12, 13 pounds an hour with Tesco driving? It just doesn't tally. But that's because I was working on a time model. What they don't see is the emotional energy, the years of experience, the fact that actually headspace-wise, if I'm delivering for an hour, it's going to be a day in my head kind of thing. And all these things that we kind of, so it's not about what we're bringing to the table per se, it's about the value that we're offering. And I know for some, it's going to be difficult because of the business model, certainly within accountancy, but the price per hour model, if we can try and come away from that, and I've used several models. So I work on a retainer for some of the world's largest brands, including Tesco. So I have a retained kind of model. I also have a subscription model. So people will book for 12 sessions over the year. So all these things I've put into place to build the ecosystem of the business. However, and I certainly know there's a lot of accountants out there who are very passionate about what they do. And the reason they've got to where they are is because actually they've had poor experiences directly or indirectly of mismanagement of money or lifestyle. So I had to build a business which suited the ecosystem. So I needed to have that kind of passion and the morals and the ethics of why I do what I do, but I also needed to pay the mortgage. Halifax said the mortgage doesn't get paid on dreams and missions, sadly. So what I do is quite openly, I charge my corporate clients a lot of money, but they subsidize the work that I do in the prison system and the education system. And then collectively, it allows me to do the work that I do for free with charities and organizations at the other end. So that means ethically and morally, I've still got that buzz from what I do, but also I build a business on the back of my speaking career because I did it a weird way around. Most people have a brilliant business and write a book and then become a speaker. I just became a speaker and everything else is building up from that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes absolutely perfect sense. And there's a great story about a guy going and fixing an ocean-going liner. He walks in and he goes in. The engine's not working or something. He goes in, goes down to the engine room, takes his toolkit out, gets the hammer, bangs it on the side of something on the engine or something, and it all starts working. And the captain turns around and goes, "Right, that's brilliant. You fixed it. That's fantastic. We can go back on our cruise." He says, "So how much is that?" He goes, "It's $10,000. And he goes, $10,000? That's ridiculous." He said, "I need an invoice for that. And I want you to break it all down." He goes, "Yeah, absolutely fine." So the tap with the hammer on the side of the machine, £100, and the experience and all the lifelong learning to get to this position, so I know where to hit the engine, $9,990. And it's that, isn't it? And we forget that.
It's
and
so
we forget
true.
that.
I think it was. I love that example. I saw somewhere. I think it might have been Screwfix, but I could be wrong. That we're actually advertising holes, not the screws, not the drill.
Yeah.
I love that. So I think herein lies the challenge, that we need to focus not on the. This could be controversial, by the way. We need to focus not on the business brand per se. It's the personal brand.
Oh, tell me about it.
Your personal brand. If you look at Elon Musk, we know he's the founder of Tesla. He's the founder of SpaceX. He's the owner of Twitter / X, depending on what it's called this week. We know all that, but actually his personal brand is over and above all of the businesses that he owns and runs. He's prepared to stand and fall by that, because people hate Elon Musk. People love Elon Musk, and he's prepared to win by that. And I think in our own worlds, that's what we need to do. Focus on our personal brand. Because when you do that and people buy into you, your clients buy into you emotionally, buy into what you're about, what you find is people want to book you, not a tribute act. And I love that, because actually that's what they're buying. They're buying you. And I think of all the relationship I've got, my website guy, my videographer, my photographer, all the people that I have in my entourage, it's not because I've qualified them as the best as what they do. I know that they're very good at what they do, but it's because we have a great, strong emotional connection. I can rely on them. I can trust them. They're going to do their best for me. And we have a great relationship.
Yeah, perfect. I love that. We nearly come to the end. That is ridiculous, man. We could chat for hours. And I said that in the emails before this. Behind you have what I've got behind me. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, it really doesn't help. But it's a guitar. Do you play?
I play Amazing Grace very slowly and very badly.
Fantastic.
So if that qualifies as playing, yes, but no, the answer is no. But a huge country music fan. It's not all about losing your doggy and misses. A lot of it is, to be fair. And I love the storytelling element of country music, and I aspire to play that thing one day. Right,
awesome. Well, that's a challenge for you then, because that's what I did during COVID. Was up my game on the guitar. Got a funny story for you here. I play in a duo. I play with a guy called Will Vine. So he's the guy that helped me write that song. And we go out as Vine and Dandy. I had a phone call.
I like that.
I had a phone call a few months ago saying, do you do country and western? I said, well, we do a couple of country and western songs, but no, not really. Oh, we're doing a country and western evening. So I pointed the guy in the right direction, and he disappeared. He phoned me back a week later. Are you sure you can't do it? So we actually did a country and western gig a couple of weeks ago. And so you'd have absolutely loved it. And basically half of the songs we did were country and western songs. And I'm sort of like thinking, hey, this isn't actually too bad. So did you go to country to country?
Yeah, I didn't go this year, but I usually go every year. It's an amazing event. It's the only time I can get away wearing a cowboy hat and actually not be arrested or kind of looked at weirdly. And Rhinestone Cowboy, having a great choice. Thank you so much for popping that on. Nice.
Doesn't quite work with the headphones, but so what should I be listening to when I'm having my lunch? What should I ask Alexa to play?
So you'll be, if you actually look at Luke Coombs' website, you'll know that actually who do I base my personal branding on. So Luke Coombs, absolutely. I would check his stuff out. Jason Aldean, so I prefer the kind of more modern country, although I do like the old stuff as well. My go-to is always Garth Brooks. For always, and he was the guy. Actually, there's two reasons I got into country. The first was Garth Brooks. The second was seeing Shania Twain and Denim. The combination of both of those things got me into country music. So.
No, that is absolutely brilliant. Nick, you've been absolutely amazing. I'm just going to remind everybody where we can see you, which is on that's the first day, isn't it?
Yes, the first day. Yeah, day one, 10 a.m.
Day one, 10 a.m. at the Practice Owners Theatre, How to Forge Ahead. And you're going to hang around afterwards. Please come and say hello. I'd love a hug. Next week, I've got a couple of other questions for you. But next week, I have got the amazing... I hope I dropped it in here. I did. I have got Zoe and Joe coming in here. They were on your podcast, weren't they?
They were, yeah, absolutely. They're lovely. So good.
And Caroline's joining us as well, because they're doing an awful lot for bookkeepers at Accountex this year. So we're going to be chatting all things bookkeeping next week with those lovely three ladies. I cannot wait. My question to you, what are you most excited about seeing at Accountex then, Nick?
I think if there's a type of person that I'm looking forward to seeing the most, apart from your good self, of course, it's kind of the reason why it works so well on kind of the first year I delivered for Accountex and still do, is the person that maybe they feel they want to have a better conversation around things like mental health, but they want to hear a different perspective, not just a clinical approach, not just a hippie fluffy approach, just that kind of real life, no BS kind of approach to mental health and well-being from a very different kind of person in this field. I'm like a fat Joe Wicks. And I think so. It's the person that kind of are prepared to just let their guard drop enough to think about their own stuff, but I promise you, no forced participation. It's not like coming to an open therapy session. Absolutely not. You're absolutely safe, and I guarantee you, what you see here is what you get in person as well. Fantastic.
Nick, you've been absolutely delightful. Thank you very much to everybody for all your lovely comments. We will see you next week, and we see Nick at Accountex. And there's still tickets available. They're absolutely free. So make sure you come along and come and see Nick there. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Ashley. Thanks, everyone.
Cheerio now. Bye-bye.
You get out what you put in.